Brahmastra in the Mahabharata is a single projectile that's able to destroy the whole universe. I'm going to talk about the Brahmastra as a policy tool to fight three of India's current economic crises. But first, some context and background. The Lehman bankruptcy and American subprime meltdown had completely dislocated the global economy in 2008. The West collapsed, China had braked hard, and oil spiked near $150 per barrel. But India's UPA government then trotted out the Brahmastra of stimulus to keep economic growth humming and healthy. Inevitably, of course, our fiscal deficit almost touched 5% of GDP. Inflation breached 8%, and rupee slipped to 62 to the dollar, and interest rates zoomed to 8%. But you know, the Indian ship stayed largely afloat. Now enter the Modi government in 2014. Now, for the next 4 years, it enjoyed a charmed existence. Oil prices fell to $30 per barrel. America got grooving at 3% annual growth. Europe shrugged off its Armageddon. China turned around. And within such a benign environment, India's macroeconomy repaired itself. The fiscal deficit fell to 3.5%, inflation went under 5%, American dollars poured in, and the 10-year treasury sank below 7%. Modi was Napoleon's proverbial lucky general. But then it was President Donald Trump's turn in 2017 and 18. He slashed taxes, he hiked the American deficit even as America's economy turned red hot. He choked off Iranian oil supplies and triggered global trade wars. Now American interest rates are promising, or are threatening, to touch 4%. All hell then broke loose in emerging economies as billions of dollars flew back home to America. Today, India is again teetering at the edge of a macroeconomic imbalance. Look at what's happening. Treasuries have crossed 8%. The rupee has plummeted 15% to over 74 to the dollar. Oil is perilously close to the three-figure mark of $100, and hundreds of stocks are in a pretty severe bear grip, even as market indices have crashed by over 15%. Modi, once Napoleon's lucky general, is in danger of becoming Trump's fall guy. After 4 years of a blessed existence, Modi is facing his first acute economic challenge. Now, does he have the gumption to deploy a policy Brahmastra to kill the crisis even before it can careen out of control? Unfortunately, within just the last month, the Modi government has failed to deal with three crippling economic crises. Now, crisis one. Oil is the most treacherous fault line in India's economy. It's also the Modi government's biggest policy failure. When he took office, India imported 77% of its oil requirement. Today, that's up by nearly 6 percentage points to about 83%. Crude oil imports have galloped by a debilitating 56% over the previous year. Nearly 1/4 of our $400 billion of foreign exchange reserves shall be consumed in importing oil this year. And yet, all that the Prime Minister could do is plead with the world to help India. Now take the case of Ken, which produces nearly a quarter of our crude oil and pays out 85% of its revenues to the government. Now, you would expect any sovereign to give a very fair deal to such a critical enterprise, right? Now, think again. Our rulers have gouged nearly $2 billion with a B, from the company in various punitive taxes. That's $2 billion. Even as their arbitration case in the UK is still being argued. Is this taxation or extortion? I leave it for you to figure that out. But if you think our government exploits only foreign producers, remember how it denuded ONGC's balance sheet by $6 billion. Again, billion, forcing it to buy HPCL. And how it rolled back the policy of free fuel pricing by forcing oil companies to cut by 1 rupee per litre. That destroyed 1 lakh crore of public sector wealth in one trading hour. Now, crisis number 2. The Indian rupee is joined at the hip to oil prices. The Modi government has spent an eye-watering 40 billion, once again, billion with a B, $40 billion since April in trying to stem its fall. Now, earlier in 2013, the UPA government had sold $20 billion to stabilize the local currency, but those were crisis-ridden days with oil at over $100 per barrel. Today, what Modi's government is doing is really short-sighted and ineffective. I cannot for the life of me fathom why Modi has not floated $40 billion of NRI bonds yet. Here's another Brahmastra which has remained inexplicably parked in the hangar. Now to the crisis number 3. IL&FS's repeated defaults could trigger a devastating contagion, which of course is already painfully evident. Forced to write down IL&FS debt to zero, mutual funds have stopped lending to NBFCs, who in turn have switched off credit to housing companies. So, one Supertech defaults, which causes Indiabulls housing to crash by 15% the next day, which lowers the net asset value of several funds who face redemption pressures, forcing them to sell good paper. Prices fall further, credit dries up completely, more companies default, more write-downs happen, followed by higher redemptions, more distressed sales, until the credit economy grinds to a halt. Since IL&FS's default, the top 20 NBFCs have obliterated over 3 lakh crore. Just get this right, 3 lakh crore of investors' wealth. That, in simple and graphic language, is a contagion. The government must underwrite a superior debt or equity instrument of 30,000 crores now. That is using the Brahmastra to provide immediate cash assistance of 30,000 crores for IL&FS to be paid off before any other creditor or equity holder. Now that would secure the taxpayers' risk. The contagion would abruptly stop, markets would calm down, and then the new board could oversee an orderly rescue of IL&FS, including asset sales over the next few months. Unfortunately, this government's half-hearted actions have converted the possible Brahmastra into a boomerang of contagion, which can be lethal for a $3 trillion economy, which is now being held to ransom for a few $1 billion of liabilities. It is a shame, really.